Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's an overreaction Monday. There's a lot to react to. Atlanta United, no postseason. Philadelphia Union, Supporters Shield winners. You've got Seattle and LAFC facing off in the MLS playoffs after LAFC gave up a late equalizer to Portland. You've got the battle of the expansion teams, Nashville and Miami playing. We'll talk about the matchups. We'll talk about some early predictions, kind of how everything worked out on decision day. Yes, there will be a large focus on Atlanta because it's Overreaction Monday. It's about y'all's reactions. So you can share those reactions if you haven't already by tweeting at us at Soccer Down Here. You can send us an email, soccerdownhere@gmail.com, or you can join us on the Twitch pitch, twitch.tv/soccerdownhere, and share your thoughts there. We're going to try to get to everybody today as best we can. Sometimes Overreaction Mondays or Tuesdays or Thursdays or Fridays or Wednesdays can get a little weird with a lot of stuff all at once. We're going to try to cover as much of it as possible, and we'll see what happens. It could be one of those days. I'm hitting the hard stuff already, so let's get the Red Bull fired up. And, John, have you already switched to Mountain Dew, or are you still not drinking caffeine yet?
I'm finishing this one, but the caffeine is locked and loaded and ready to go.
How many cups do you have stacked up there?
2.
Why do you have a cup and a cup?
Well, because remember the discussion that we had about the mixing of...
Oh, you've realized that's a bad idea.
I haven't realized it's a bad idea. I'm just making sure that I'm prepared for the eventuality.
Well, that's good. All right. You might need to start hitting the caffeine a little earlier than you planned, but let's jump into this. That's still gross. Like it's called ice. It's called cold soft drinks. They're good. Anyway.
That is a cold soft drink.
Jason Nix, I know John's level is a little low. For some reason, he can't figure out how to do anything else about it. I will push this up.
Out.
Anyway, I'm going to push his up a little bit here. Hopefully, you don't get a little feedback because I'm jacking his volume up about as far as I can get it going. So hopefully that'll help a little bit. But yeah, John might need to pull the mic a little closer or something. Anyway, let's move on. What do we got?
Daniel Price leads us off this morning. After the match yesterday, he says, I blame the refereeing for this loss and the ending of Atlanta United season. Sorry, not sorry. You can at me all you want. Elfath lost control of the match and was incorrect on most, if not all, the calls that matter.
That's a little harsh, Daniel. I'm not going to blame Ismail Elfath for Atlanta not making the postseason. I will blame him for completely blowing a penalty decision that he is heavily involved in. It's not just him because he has a video assistant referee to deal with, but Elfath makes the final decision. I'm going to touch on a couple of aspects of it. I'm sure it's going to come back up. We'll continue to get into detail about it, but I don't want to get stuck on anything. So I'm assuming there's a lot of different things to talk about today. The call was made on the field that it was a penalty. Video assistant referees are supposed to intervene when there is a clear and obvious error made by the center referee. I don't believe anyone thought there was a clear and obvious error made by the referee in the situation. We're not supposed to re-referee situations with video assistant referee. Judgment call, referee made the call. Did he see everything? I don't know. We don't know what the conversation was between Elfath and Hilario Grajeda. If Elfath said, I didn't see something, okay, fine. I think there was contact. I think the contact brought Gallagher down. Was Gallagher off balance? Sure, that's an argument. Was there contact? I think there was.
Yeah.
I've seen some arguments that there was no contact. I don't know what is being watched in that case. I think it's a penalty. I think it is looking for a reason not to call a penalty, to not call it there. That is not what VAR is supposed to be there for. I also think it should have been a penalty when Marcelino Moreno was brought down in the box. Mm-hmm. That should have been a penalty. That wasn't looked at because it was judged not to be a clear and obvious error. But the Gallagher one was. I think the Jurgen Damm penalty that was given was the weakest of the three.
Yeah.
Did that cost Atlanta the game potentially? Yeah, it did. You score the first goal, we know what the records are. We know how important that is. I think Atlanta goes on to win the match. It doesn't happen. You have the emotional swing. You give up a goal the other way. That's on the team. It's understandable, but that's on the team. But no, you put yourself in this situation by dropping points earlier. You never want your season to come down to one call like this. So you can't blame everything on LFF for the whole year. You can ask some serious questions about this game and add them to the list of serious questions that have needed to be asked all year long. Because there's a list, and it's real. And it's not sour grapes, and it's not just, oh, here they go again complaining about referees. There's been a lot of really strange decisions that have not gone Atlanta United's way. And a lack of explanations, publicly for sure, in the case of the Figal situation. But it is what it is. Like, you didn't get enough points in games that you controlled that had nothing to do with referee decisions to get into the postseason. You're not in the postseason. This is just added to the list of the reasons that made it more difficult to get into the postseason, but you controlled your own fate, and you didn't do a good enough job to handle that. You're missing out. But I completely and utterly disagree with overturning that penalty decision. Completely. I think it's one of the worst calls I've seen in a long time.
Along those same lines, GTU TD1, as I've moved the microphone closer, and hopefully it helps.
Yeah, I can actually turn this down a little bit so I don't hear whining in my ear.
Ridiculous how bad at pro referees is this season. Completely deciding today's game again, taking away 2 early clear penalties in the box. Atlanta should be up 2-0. But at MLS just lets the referees continue to affect outcomes with bad officiating. Why watch #MLS?
Well, you watch it because refereeing is hard, and there's referee decisions that we argue about in every league around the world. MLS is no different than that. I think at times MLS gets lumped in like they're the only league that has referee problems. Have you heard a conversation about the Premier League before? Because, man, they get going on it too. It happens. Look, here's the thing on this, because I'm seeing a little bit of the discussion in the Twitch pitch, and I'm coming in at the end of it. On the Gallagher situation for me, I've seen that brought back where there is no contact. I've seen a decision not made because there's no contact. Gallagher doesn't dive, in my opinion. I don't know, maybe people think he dove. He didn't dive. He pulled a move on Aloy Room. Is he bent over? Is he, maybe off balance? Yeah, those things are absolutely valid. But there's contact, and I think Stephen Glass said it 100% dead on, and nobody wants to hear it because this isn't how this stuff normally gets talked about. Look, you can say Gallagher's falling down, and he would have fallen down anyway. What happens when you fall down? You get up, right?
Yeah.
What happens if you pull that move and you slip and you fall down and there's no contact? Aloy Room comes sliding in, decides, man, I'm going to bring him down and potentially get a red card and a penalty. I'm going to make sure I get out of the way. He leans out of the way. He doesn't touch him. What happens if Gallagher falls down there? He gets back up and puts it in an open net. Mm-hmm. What can he not do because he gets hit by Aloy Room? He can't get up and put it into an open net.
Yeah.
That's a penalty. Stone cold.
Yeah.
Penalty. No question. Yeah. You want to get into any argument about it, it's a penalty, and you don't get it. And, yes, it had a huge impact on the game. No, it's not the only reason why Atlanta didn't make the postseason. It shouldn't have come down to this. It did. I don't like the call at all. It's very frustrating. Wildchara, and this is something that I think is really unique to soccer and needs to stop in this country. Wildchara says, the more we talk about the reffing, the more this league will not be taken seriously. In baseball, we gripe about the refs, but we still watch. A lot of people just not even caring. No, I don't think the ratings have anything to do with refereeing in this league. I think it's an easy argument from soccer fans to say that I don't watch because of the refereeing. So then you can't watch any league because there's always going to be a complaint about the refereeing. MLS is no different. MLS this season has had a worse year with referees than recent ones. I will 100% say that. It's been very frustrating because I thought the refereeing was hopefully moving towards getting better. It didn't this year. Now, this year was a huge challenge for referees as well. You had different issues with travel. You had more new referees working their way in because you had some veteran referees not work as much. Alan Kelly worked like 2 or 3 games on the field this year. So you had to work other people in. There's growing pains. You had some good referees have bad days that I've seen around the league. That happens. But it's got to get better. I don't think it's affecting the viewing because I don't think people say, I'm not watching because of a referee. Now, I think where you can argue it has an effect is the quality of play because referees don't manage games effectively at times. And people could say, well, I'm going to watch a better league. That can happen, sure. But there's griping about officials and referees in every league and every sport. There's nothing new with it. I mean, the arguments about what's a catch, what's not a catch, it's not keeping people from watching the NFL. And it gets talked about every single weekend in football. It's part of it. I think it's a little bit of an excuse that it's keeping people from watching. It does have to get better. VAR should help it get better. In some cases, like we saw yesterday, it hurts the process rather than helps it. My opinion.
Turner Kirby, after the match yesterday, delete this season from the archives. And Turner, correct me if I'm wrong in changing a player's name here in this next part. He says,
we talked about it on the show yesterday, or on the full-time report. It was Escobar's tweet that he was talking about.
Right. However, Escobar's wrongly criticized tweet still reigns true. I'll support this team regardless and will always be proud to. Now let's shock the world. Well, region in a month.
Look, don't delete the season from the archives. Don't at all. I think Jeff Larenowitz nailed it in his comments yesterday after the match. You have to learn from this. Atlanta United, for whatever reason around it, there was a perception, and I mean the reason why is you'd been successful. There had been a perception that success is just handed to you. It's not. Not in this league, not in any league. Not for anybody. I mean, look at Real Madrid. We talked about it. Everybody talked about it yesterday. They're going to Valencia. Valencia's sold everybody they can sell. They're actively not trying to make moves that would allow them to add another player. They're slashing the expenditures. They're doing everything possible to not spend money. Should be an easy win for Real Madrid, right? They should just show up, put on the shirt, flash the Real Madrid badge, and get 3 points. And they lost 4-1. It happens. You need to learn from this. Atlanta United can't just show up and win games. Atlanta United can't just be expected to win everything. And that's from a team perspective. That's a player perspective. That's a fan perspective, too. The overwhelming vitriol needs to be put into context as well. This is difficult. It is difficult to have a season go without anything go against you in terms of injuries or bad calls or crazy situations or whatever. It's hard. It's hard to make every possible move 100% correct because you can't see everything that comes out in front of you. You can't see how a player is going to adjust. You can't see how a player's fitness is and how a player, doesn't get injured, all these different things. And you can't see what's going to happen the rest of the league. It's a hard league. The margins for error are very small. And when you have all the things that have happened in 2020, this is what you get. You got to learn from it. You've got to say, this is not where we want to be. This is not what we want to have happen again. And we're going to do everything possible to avoid that from happening. See, Gwen totally agrees. Mm-hmm. That's very, very important. So, no, don't erase it. This needs to be a learning lesson for everybody. Because at times, when you think it comes easy, either you don't understand everything it takes to be successful, or you take it for granted that it's just going to be success because you put on that badge. And that's not how soccer works. That's not how the world works. So you have to be ready to know how hard it can be and appreciate it more when you do succeed. I think at times maybe that part was taken for granted. This season's a big learning lesson for a lot of people involved. And I hope that the learning happens and things are better next year. It should be. I know that this front office is going to work to make that happen. I know that Arthur Blank's going to work to make that happen. That's the job. But, yeah, this is a learning lesson for everybody, from top all the way down to the supporters. I think it is a big learning lesson about how hard it is to be successful.
Shiva, after the match yesterday, we put ourselves in this position. A win on decision day was never going to be easy in Columbus, but a win or draw during the season to prevent us from being in this position was possible. Atlanta cannot miss the playoffs in 2021.
No, Atlanta can't miss the playoffs in a year. But again, this goes back to the whole point that I was just talking about. Atlanta can't miss the playoffs in 2021. But will Atlanta United miss the playoffs again in another season? Yeah, they will. That's life. That doesn't mean that everybody forgot how to soccer. That doesn't mean that nobody knows what they're doing, but they did know what they were doing the year before, but they don't now. That doesn't mean any of that. It means you didn't have a good enough year to make the playoffs. And nothing is handed to you. Even in a year where 10 teams make the playoffs, even in MLS where a lot of teams do make the postseason, nothing is handed to you in the sport. So it's easy to say that Atlanta can't do this, they can never do this again. It'll happen because injuries happen, because players lose form, because transfers happen, because lots of things. That's the game. You have to do everything possible for it not to happen. And going back to the first part of the tweet, that's very important because if you get a point against Toronto, if you get a point against DC, even giving them the first goal, you come back and equalize. You get a point in that game. If you turn one of the scoreless draws that you had in that run where you were trying to get your footing into a win, you're in the postseason. You're done. You're in. That's it. You didn't do that. So it comes down to this. And yes, you had a dodgy decision go against you, a couple of them. You can't have it come down to that thin of a margin because things can trip over the line. You have to do everything possible to avoid it. You weren't able to get the results all year long to get there. Came down to a game where you were a big underdog, and the odds were correct.
Turner, after last night, again says, seeing a lot of overreaction, saying that this is a major setback. I don't understand how you see it as a setback with all the stuff that happened this year.
It's a setback because you didn't make the postseason. I mean, it has to be a setback. You can't flip it the other way and say that nothing went wrong. You know, it's a setback. But it doesn't mean it is a catastrophic setback. It doesn't mean you can't recover from it. It means it's a setback. You didn't make the postseason. You had a streak of seasons where you made the postseason. You didn't here. That's what it is. It can't be acceptable. It can't be, yeah, whatever, it's no big deal. It can't be that. But you also can't lose sight of the big picture, which is this is a club that is trying to win trophies every year. You're not going to have a chance. You still have one more chance to win a trophy this year, and you're way behind the eight ball in that one. That's an unacceptable year. 2021 needs to get back on track. So it's a setback. There's nothing wrong with saying that. That's not saying anything bad. It is. So now you got to bounce back. One thing, and I'm seeing some things as they come here in the Twitch pitch. So we'll get to questions specifically from the Twitch pitch. It's a lot of stuff flowing. So you guys keep talking, do your thing. Walchara, and I keep seeing Walcharas for some reason. Hi. I've been told money spent doesn't equal success in MLS, so missing the playoffs is an acceptable outcome. No, nothing's acceptable. I want to make that clear. Money spent gives you more opportunities to win. In MLS, there's more randomness than in La Liga or Serie A or the Premier League, whatever. In those leagues, you can spend as much as you want to spend outside of financial fair play restrictions or other league restrictions. But you can spend more and outspend teams and give yourself far greater chances to win. MLS, there's more randomness. But yes, if you spend more, you should be winning more. In general. One season is not in general. That needs to be understood because everybody has a bad year. It can happen. Toronto FC has been to the MLS Cup final in 2016, 2017, and 2019. They didn't make the playoffs in 2018. It can happen. That's where the randomness can factor in. So, and Walchara, this is disappointing to hear. It's not on you. It's just in reality. I think some of it is down to a lot of factors. But as a casual sport fan of soccer, it completely dropped off my radar after Atlanta didn't have the year that they had been having. That's one of the challenges that Atlanta's had that's maybe a little unique. You compare Atlanta and Minnesota, who came in at the same time, right? Minnesota had great fan support, not to the same size as Atlanta did, but they were also really bad their first 2 years. Really, really bad. They made the postseason last year. They're back in this year. Now Atlanta went the other way. They had a good year. They had a great year where they won the MLS Cup. They had another good year, but that wasn't seen as a success according to some, and now they've had a bad year. Nowhere near Minnesota's bad years, but a bad year. And now you're getting the reverse. It's like everything was great, and now people are dropping off, where Minnesota started with hardcore, we love it, we don't care if we're bad, we're going to keep coming. Man, this is really bad, but we're going to keep coming. Wow, can we get somebody who could stop a goal some way, somehow, but we're still here. Okay, now we're actually pretty good. All right, this is cool. That's different. That builds. Atlanta now has to work at keeping people engaged. And that's a harder trick. That takes everybody involved. That takes supporters. That takes media. That takes, and it's not the media's job, but that, the media dropped off in some coverage as well because there was a lot going on. It's a crazy year for sports. So, I mean, if you're a local TV sports, producer, editor, what have you, and you've got everything happening in the second half of the year and one team's not playing all that great, well, yeah, they're probably going to lose a little bit of coverage. That happens. Got to fight back, got to get back there. So, Wildchar, I mean, I hope you keep engaged with it because we're going to keep talking about it. There's plenty of others who will keep talking about it and tell the story now of how you get back, how you don't have this year repeat itself, and how you get back to the top competing for trophies next year, because it happens to everybody. It's a challenge. It's tough.
Sporting Kansas City, not in the playoffs last year, top in the West this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, MLS just has more randomness because of the structure of the league. It always will. But over a period of time, you spend more, you put together the right group to lead the team, you're going to have more success than not. But yeah, you're going to have these years where there's blips. Things can really go against you, and you're not able to just spend your way out of it. You have limitations in how many people you can have on your roster and how much talent and quality you can have on your roster. You get stuck sometimes.
Matthew Edelstein. Can we join Liga MX instead? No Byzantine salary cap rules and possibly better officiating.
I don't know about possibly better officiating. That's that's questionable. This year, maybe a little bit better officiating. Salary cap rules, no, you don't have it, but you've got teams that can't stay in business and complete seasons, so that's not necessarily a good trade-off. I think now, because of Atlanta wanting to spend more, or at least you would expect them to spend more if they could, there's an idea that salary caps are bad. I totally disagree that salary caps are bad. Salary caps have made MLS into what it is. It's time to spend more across the board.
Yeah.
It's time to open it up a little bit more. Well, it was before this pandemic thing we're dealing with that has wrecked revenues. So that might be the great correction here at the moment in what this looks like. MLS needs to strategize about how it can spend more across the board. Their structure will help them ride this out a little bit more than some other leagues, but it's still a massive hit. I mean, you're talking about, at the beginning of it, they said they were going to lose $1 billion. I don't think they were stretching that. I think it could come into that kind of a ballpark figure. That's tough for any business to deal with, and it will affect future spending. So now how you manage going forward is going to be very important. But salary caps are good, but they do make it harder to be the best team in the league year after year after year after year after year. They can make some changes to make it better.
Kosk Arch talking roster. There are a lot of good pieces on this team, especially around the perimeter, but the center is just a bunch of question marks. I think I like Moreno, but not sure how he's going to develop and who he'll play with at the 8 and 6. New coach is going to have to come out hot. This team's not terrible, but it was also unlucky, and it wasn't good enough to overcome that.
Moreno's a stud. I don't understand why there would even be questions about Marcelino Moreno after his last two performances. Is he a Carlos Vela? No. Carlos Vela, I don't think, really understands what a tackle is. Marcelino Moreno is very good in that realm. He's a different player. But he is a vital, vital piece going forward. He's more than I think I like him, in my opinion. I think he's been really, really good. He's not sharp. He's not 100%. But, yeah, I think Moreno shows you his quality. He's very, very good. I think you have to make some tough decisions on what the rest of that central midfield looks like. I think you need a 6. I think you need a consistent 6 as good as Mo Adams has been. I don't think he is the guy to build around. I think he's a guy to have in your group who can play the 6 and the 8. I don't think he is the 6. I think you're going to need to go for quality there, a bigger upgrade. I think you're going to have to make some decisions on around that. Is it Hindman? Is it Hosetu? Is it Remedi? Is it somebody new? I don't have the answer to that. Or do you go get a 10 and Moreno drops into the 8 role, which I think is very possible as well. I don't have the answer to that. Some of that's going to be down to Ezequiel Barco's potential transfer, if that happens. Some of that could be down to other roster machinations and moves and opportunities. So that's definitely something to decide. But I think you've got one piece going forward in your midfield for a long time in Marcelino Moreno.
Stizzle A after the match. The boys played their hearts out only to have it taken from them. I wouldn't want Ismail Elfath reffing you 9. He cost Atlanta United the match in a playoff game. Shouldn't have come to this hashtag on par reaction Monday.
I would want Ismail Elfath refereeing anything other than yesterday because he's one of the best referees in the league. He had a bad day. He flat out had a bad day. I felt like he lost his nerve after the VAR decision. I don't know if he started questioning himself more. I don't know if, because that got everybody riled up, that it was harder for him to control the match. He's one of the best. He doesn't get, World Cup matches, Youth World Cup matches for no reason. He's an excellent referee. He had a very bad day. And I'm really blown away that the video assistant referee tells him he made a clear and obvious error, and he looks at that and says yes to bring that back, when that is just against the way that VAR is supposed to be involved to begin with, and he should know that, and he shouldn't bring that back, and then it's a completely different game. So he made a decision that changed the trajectory of the match, and that's the last thing referees want. One bad game doesn't make you a bad referee, though. We've got to stop with some of that, okay? Ismail Elfath is one of the best in the league. He's a FIFA ref. He's very good. He was very poor yesterday.
Jason Wright of the Jason Wright Agency using the hashtag HowardWebbOut.
I would have some questions about Pro this season because the referees have had a bad year, so there has to be questions just in general. Are there some excuses for that? Yes. I have some huge issues with the way that communication has been handed down from Pro. I have a massive issue with the fact that the team was told that they Pro got it wrong in the Figal situation, but there was no public apology, no public explanation. That is a massive misstep by Pro. Massive. And that's a problem, and that should be followed up on. And, I think a lot of teams have a lot of complaints, more so than usual. So when that happens, whoever's heading up that organization has to be questioned. It didn't get better this year. It got worse. And it's not just because of the year we're in 2020 with all the challenges. There's got to be some answers to some of the things that went wrong this year, and it's got to be better. The league can be better if the refereeing is better.
Katie Waramask. Yet again, a bright start with nothing to show for it. Unlucky non-calls, a few mental lapses. 12th is perhaps not a fair reflection of the talent, but team could just never gel to look consistently threatening.
Yep. Non-calls affected yesterday. Shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. This is a more talented team than 12th place. I totally agree with that. But they never were first choice all year long. They never played their first choice lineup one time this season. It never happened. Even at the beginning, Miles Robinson was out. You didn't have him at the CONCACAF Champions League matches and the Nashville match. Then Joseph is gone after that. Then you start to settle on another first choice, and you just can't get all the pieces together at the same time. That's very difficult. There's no way around that. That's very, very difficult. That made it harder, and you weren't able to overcome it.
Michael Head, 2020 equals crap fest. I hope the front office makes the right coaching hire and personnel decisions. I do not think just throwing a recovering Joseph into this mess rights this ship.
Well, no, the coach has got to be part of it. But, yes, bringing Joseph into this makes this team a whole lot better. There's no question about it. Like we've said, if you go through and add 12 goals from Joseph Martinez in 23 games, which would be far under his usual output in terms of rate, you add 12 goals to this team this year. You are probably a 5 or 6 seed. Do you want to be a 5 or 6 seed? No, you want to be a number 1 seed. But that's just one player up top who is a consistent goal scorer that can change that. You did have other injuries to deal with. You did have other challenges. But if you have more goals in this team, and Joseph would give you more goals, I don't really have any reason to think that he wouldn't. You're a much better team. You then deal with the other little things, which, like Jurgen Damm pulling the hamstring when he starts to get fit. You sell Pitti, you bring in Marcelino Moreno, you got to ride that out, the injuries to Barco. It's a whole lot better with Joseph Martinez. He would have a big effect. I do totally believe that, and I think it's being undersold. For what reason, I don't know, that Joseph wouldn't fix everything. No, nobody fixes everything. But is this team a solid playoff team with 12 more goals in it? Yeah. And I think Joseph probably finds more goals than that.
Since we're on Joseph, Jordan Friend says, looking at the pieces on this team, it looks like it was put together to support Joseph. Excited to see them next year with him, but you would think we need somebody else who's aggressive at goal.
It's not quite that simple. I mean, I said it on the Southern Fried Soccer podcast, and I know Shiva asked about it, so I'm going to jump ahead because I saw it in my timeline this morning. You need a secondary goal scorer. You can go far with one. Teams do, but you need somebody who can score goals. That's not having a second forward. I want to make that clear. And it's not training somebody to be a second forward or to score more goals. It's production. 2017, 2018. 2017 especially, you had Tito Villalba who scored double-digit goals, and some of those came when Joseph was out of the lineup due to injury, but he scored double-digit goals. He was a goal-scoring threat. Miguel Almiron was a goal-scoring threat in his 2 years here. 2019, you didn't really have a secondary goal-scoring threat. That made it harder. This year, you didn't have a primary goal-scoring threat. That made it impossible to make the postseason. You need somebody who is a threat for 10 goals. If they get 8, they get 9, whatever. Around 10 goals is what you're looking for. That is something that will be necessary. That could be Jurgen Damm. Because you got to remember, Joseph's presence changes the way this team looks going forward. It pulls defenders away. They got to deal with Joseph. It creates more space for a Marcelino Moreno, for a Jurgen Damm cutting inside, for an Ezequiel Barco. It creates more opportunities for others. They have to take advantage of it. You didn't get enough of that in 2019. You didn't have Joseph there in 2020. It made it a lot easier to defend this group. So you've got to have that. It's not a second forward. It's not another person. It is somebody else who can stretch a defense. You've got to have that. This team was built to get the most out of Joseph. I mean, from before the season, it was built to get the most out of Joseph, and you're still thinking about getting the most out of Joseph because you should be. He's one of the best goal scorers in the league that the league has ever seen. So you've got to build it around that. You go into next season with what is currently here, and you look at a potential front five, and let's say they stay in the same general shape. We'll call it a 4-1-4-1 for now, 4-3-3. It's the same stuff. But you take that 4 midfielders in front of the 6, and you take the forward. You have Joseph up top. You have Barco. You have Moreno. You have either Heinemann or Josetu, and you have Jurgen Damm. That's a very good attacking group that will score goals. Who gets more goals? Who gets the most goals outside of Joseph? I don't know, and I'm really curious to see that. I wonder if it might be Moreno in the way that the team plays and the space that could open up there. But it's going to need to be somebody. It's going to need to be somebody in that 8 to 10 goals a season range. You're going to need that kind of production to take some pressure off of Joseph, to give him a little more space, and also take advantage of the space that Joseph opens up. So that's a good building block. I think you still need a 6, and that's going to be a very interesting discussion all off season long as to what you do with that position. The back line, it sounds like there's questions about Franco Escobar going into the last year of his contract. He's under contract for next year, but that's where you start to see either a new contract signed or potentially a move. What do you do there? What does he want to do? What does the club want to do? I don't think yesterday really changes any of that for me. I'd love to know the details of what happened yesterday when he was sent off, but I don't think that changes my perception of it. Your back line, it sounds like there could be a decision to make on Fernando Meza. He was linked with a move back to Xolos. I think that could have been potentially tied into if they keep Pablo Guede, their manager, who he played for at Colo-Colo, but he might not keep his job. So keep an eye on Xolos right now. You've got good building blocks. You've got some changes you need to make. It's not nearly as catastrophic roster-wise as you think, but it is built to get the best out of Joseph. Now you've got to figure out some of the other pieces around that.
Before I get back into the timeline, quick news out of Cincinnati. They've announced their current roster decisions for 2021. Among those is the declining of the 2021 contract option for Greg Garza. Kendall Waston is also on that list.
Kendall Waston's on which list?
Declining the 2021 contract option.
Okay. You're going to see this very soon for Atlanta, so be ready for it. Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra are speaking to the media today. I don't know if they will speak before an announcement like this comes out or after, but this is what happens when you don't make the postseason. These decisions get made. Now, the Atlanta one, we don't know because of CONCACAF if we're in a different timeline. Look, this has never happened before with CONCACAF being at this point in the year. So it is uncharted territory. I don't know if they will have any clarification. I'll be very curious as to how that timeline works and what the explanation is. So maybe we'll find that out this afternoon. But Cincinnati, just what jumps out to me about this, so they've got 12 players under contract for 21. 4 players are out of contract. Gutman, Haglund, Spencer Ritchie, Shemisław Teton. They're going to have to figure out their goalkeeper situation. They are talking to Gutman, Zhao, Haglund, Stanko, Teton about their futures, so they're in negotiations. They took the options on Zico Bailey, who played a little bit at the end of the season, Ben Lunt, who is third-string goalkeeper, who's out on loan in USL a good bit, and they're bringing back Medunjanin, declining the options, so they go through the reentry process. Players that jump out potentially here, Siem de Jong, Mathieu Deplan, Garza, Zhao, although they're discussing a new deal for him. Hassan Ndam's a weird one because he was a very promising young center back who never got time in Cincinnati. I never understood that. Stanko, who they're talking to, Waston, Costa Rican international, but can he still play at this level? I'm not talking about coming to Atlanta. I'm just saying these are players that you want to keep an eye on around the league potentially. So very, very interesting. They're the first ones to come out with it. There will be plenty more today, probably plenty more while we're on the air with you this morning.
Michael Polacek, 3 words. Barco, leave, please.
Okay.
That's it. That's no in-depth sentence after that, just those 3 words.
Look, there is a movement that Barco's bad and Barco's terrible and Barco's done nothing while he's here and Barco's been a waste of all this stuff. None of that's true, but there's a movement for that. So, yeah, people are going to get swept up in it. Has Barco been everything that you hoped he would be? No, he hasn't. I hoped he would be further along than he was now. I hoped that last year we saw that. I mean, this is not far, way back in the past. This is after the U20 World Cup when he came back to the team. It's like, wow, okay, he's at another level now. This is good to see. He's confident. This is good. And then he gets kicked out of the game in Columbus, and the rest of the year it was wrecked. Comes in this year and looks very good early on. And never got back to that. So it's not like we haven't seen it. People will tell you that you haven't. They're lying to you. They're 100% lying to you if they say that Barco's done nothing here. Go back and look at the beginning of last season. Go back and look at the beginning of this season. Go back and look at what he did at the U20 World Cup. Yes, I know. There's people who like to say that I bring that up all the time because it was a big deal. No, he didn't do that in an Atlanta shirt. He showed you his quality. He is a very talented player. You are at a point, because we don't know the length of his contract, that you're probably getting to a decision time anyway. He is at a point where he is probably getting antsy about wanting that move to Europe. He's not a dummy. He knows that his play hasn't helped him in making that move happen. He knows that. He knows the injury situation hasn't helped. That's why it was a stupid conspiracy that he was choosing not to play. That didn't help anything. He wants to play for a big club in Europe. He might not get straight to a big club in Europe. There might need to be an in-between step for him. It could be a club in Portugal if there's money to be found there. It could be a smaller Spanish, smaller Italian club if there's money to be found there. Might not get to as big a club as he thought he would last summer. That happens. If the opportunity comes, that's a good deal for everybody involved. Yeah, I think it's the right decision to make. But you got to have a deal that makes sense. And you can't will a deal to happen. And you're not going to give him away. So that's going to take some work. We'll have to see how that goes. But no, I think the treatment of Barco from some in Atlanta has been very unfair. And I just truly don't understand it.
Michael Bucklew, as they said on TV, that first PK being taken away and then Columbus scoring almost immediately was this season in a nutshell. Nobody seemed to quit, but it never fully clicked either. But hey, CCL next month.
I mean, you got to play the thing out. That's just what it is. You know, it's not club didn't ask for it. You got to play the tournament out. It felt like a very 2020 game. Should have gotten the lead with a penalty. You had to convert it, of course, but you should have had that opportunity. It was taken away from you, I think, unfairly. You should have had another one. You didn't even get to look at that one. I think that was unfair. You still gave up a goal, which I understand why. I mean, the emotional swings of thinking you have two penalties and then getting nothing, thinking you're ready to walk to the spot, and it's taken away from you. Yeah, that's a kick to the gut. It's hard to bounce back from that. They got caught flat-footed. They gave up a goal they shouldn't have. And it's pretty much lights out at that point. They gave up a second goal while they're pushing everybody forward, which you have to do. You immediately answer that back. Okay, cool, you're back to where you were. You threw everything at the wall. You couldn't find another goal to flip it. That's 2020.
Uncertain times, at Who Took My Thrash on Twitter. Since MLS is over and I need a day to decompress after that game and the season, can we talk the game on Tuesday and make Monday #BrightSpots Monday, liking the quality of Moreno and Dom on the ball the last month, brighter days ahead?
I'm sure we'll be talking about things tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. So don't worry. We're not going anywhere. Bright spots, and this came up a couple times in different things I did last night. Bellows' development all year long, the amount of minutes he played as an 18-year-old, the contributions he had at the very end with his passing. He set up the should-have-been penalty for Gallagher yesterday. He set up the penalty for Gallagher in the Cincinnati match. His tackling has improved dramatically. One of the top left backs in the league right now at 18. He played more minutes than anybody who was born in 2002 or later. So that's a huge bright spot. Brooks Lennon, what he brought to the side, I think he's the MVP. Brooks Lennon, absolutely bright spot. Moreno and Dom's additions this year, bright spots. We're going to do, and we'll do it later this week, we're going to do a Soccer Down Here vote, and we'll put it on Twitter, and we'll have a Twitch pitch component too of team MVP, young player of the year. That's probably the two. So player of the year and young player of the year is what we'll do. So start thinking about it. Start thinking about who you would like to see up for that vote. I guess we can have 4 people up for it in the vote. The young player of the year will follow the same rules that MLS has, so 22 or younger. But we'll do that later this week. Bello and Lennon were my 2 big bright spots. Adding Moreno, adding Dom are bright spots going forward. But Bello, for me, is the biggest bright spot with the amount of minutes he played and the amount of experience he got.
Yeah. Caleb Wright. Post-pandemic, Atlanta United did fight hard, but how they played wasn't good enough too often. And the weirdness that was the 2020 season, I'm sure it would have been different if the season was a normal one. Hashtag Overreaction Monday.
Could have been. They fought, and I think the narratives that were going around, I think still have been going around, that they didn't try that's pretty insulting. They absolutely played hard. I mean, you don't have Franco Escobar have the reaction he has at the end of the game if he doesn't care. You don't have Barco kicking the ever-loving crap out of Harrison Awful on that tackle if he doesn't care. You don't have those things happen if you don't care. The effort was there. The quality was not. The consistency definitely was not. And I think that was a huge factor.
Ellen Reynolds, the result is unsurprising given how the season as a whole has gone, but it still hurts.
Absolutely hurts. Just like my emotional swings calling the thing yesterday, like I was so angry after the penalty and the goal that was given up, and angrier at halftime after watching it again and again and again, and trying to put my brain inside of Grajeda and Elfath to figure out justification for it. So yeah, I was very angry. I was encouraged by the fight in the second half. Once you got to about the 85th minute or so, it was kind of like, yeah, you're out of time. So that was time to kind of regroup a little bit. But yeah, it hurts. It sucks. Nobody wants to deal with it. Nobody wants to be done with the MLS season right now. Nobody wants that. So what do you do to make sure that doesn't happen next year? That's the process that starts today. So we will see. Shiva with a question real quick on the Twitch pitch. Where do you see Lennon playing with Dom and Escobar in the lineup? I think it goes back to the question long-term about Escobar on two phases. One, if he's going into the last year of his contract, does he want to sign a new long-term deal? Because if he does, great. If he doesn't, then you've got to make a decision on how you want to do this. Do you want to play out the last year and get nothing for him when he walks, if he says he doesn't want to sign a new deal, or do you move him on now? That's not going to be an easy decision. But if he wants to stay, I think he stays as a center back. I think it's Lennon at right back and Jurgen Damm on the right wing. That's what I think happens if Franco Escobar wants to sign a new long-term deal. This is going by Felipe Cardenas' reporting at The Athletic about going into the last year of his contract. I believe it is an option that will be picked up. You're not going to let him walk for nothing now. But if he doesn't want to sign a new long-term deal, you're back to that conversation that we had last year. And I know a lot of people said, I think Stizzelay said it in the Twitch pitch, from a front office perspective, don't let go of fan favorites. You can't run a team based off that. And when you're going into the last year of contracts, you can't run the risk of people walking for free. So when players don't want to sign a new long-term deal, what are you supposed to do? You hurt the team by letting them play their contract out. You hurt the team long-term. So do you do that? If you're going to do that, you got to make sure you're doing it at the right time. I don't think now is the right time. Because if you are right there to win a trophy next year, based off what you did this year, all right, maybe you keep that guy one more year. You hope maybe you can flip them in terms of wanting to sign a long-term deal. You roll the dice and you hope. I don't know if you want to do that right now. I think you want to make sure you know what you have, not just in 21, but in 22 and 23. You want to make sure you know what this team is going to look like. You don't want to roll the dice. You don't want to be in a DC situation where Bill Hamid leaves, you get nothing, you realize, man, we need a goalkeeper. Let's pay to get him back on loan, and then let's pay to transfer him back permanently, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in professional soccer. You can't do that. You go back to the other side, too, about making your team better. If you make transfers at those moments, and you make transfers for the right amounts, which have to be at a certain level, you have to recoup costs, all the different things that go into the MLS rules, you add to your salary cap. You add allocation money that makes your cap bigger, that can make your overall squad better. That's the unique element of MLS. That is where you are incentivized to not let players play contracts out. You're incentivized to move them on if they don't want to do a long-term deal, so you can increase your cap with allocation money. That's part of the decision you got to make here. But if Escobar's here long-term, I think it is as a center back. And I think it's Brooks Lennon as your right back and Jurgen Damm as your right winger.
Nathan Pugh is in very early this morning, and he says, what is a true fan? I look forward to the intra-supporter brown shirts determining who handles the offseason correctly. Let's rest up and get ready for 2021 and our return to the top of the table. Hashtag Unite and Conquer, then a follow-up. Is there anything worse than when your coworker heats up eggs in the microwave at the office? Hashtag
cool.
Fart.
Yeah, that's not cool. The true fan thing, man, that's been a silly discussion this year too, where things have been twisted out of shape. First with Franco Escobar's tweet, and then with supporters doing a banner that then people thought the team was pointing fingers at people, which I didn't get that sense at all. And then it just became a funny joke, because that's what we do, is we make funny jokes that are sometimes hurtful to people, but, you know, it was funny, so it's all good. I've been surprised at some of the things said by people who have been ride or die. I guess things died really fast, because it hasn't been that. That's been surprising. 1 year of adversity shouldn't do that. We'll see. I mean, it's this thing where supporters question teams' decisions, moves, lineups, things that happen in games. That's part of what we all do about this game. But there's still support for the team. Those are two separate things. Anybody can and should question moves that happen, try to understand them, disagree with them, all those different things. All that's good. But if you are a supporter, and you say you are, I mean, at least the Atlanta Till I Die hashtag didn't ever get started here like everybody else has. Rose City Till I Die, Dallas Till I Die. I mean, everybody's got one of those. It's a very standard one. I mean, when you walk away, or you start saying, well, I don't care if they make the playoffs. I don't want them to make the playoffs. I hope they lose. And you start going into that nonsense, like, man, that flipped fast. I haven't understood that. I haven't. Part of it's the way that I'm a fan. Like, if I am all bought in, or am I a casual fan of some teams or some things? Yeah, absolutely. And they might lose me. That happens. But I've never turned against something that I was a fan of. I've never been like, oh, I don't like them now. I hope they lose.
You've never done that with the Georgia Bulldogs.
No. Do I pay as much attention to Georgia as I used to? No, I don't. Because I don't pay as much attention to football in general as I used to. Was I happy that Florida blew them out this weekend? No. Am I rooting for them to lose the rest of their games? So they fire Kirby and they need to get rid of everybody, and I hope they lose everything. No, that doesn't. I don't understand that mentality. That's just me. Is that right or wrong? No, it's just how I feel about it. If you're a fan and you ride or die with it, you ride or die with it. I don't know. I mean, trading a player or selling a player shouldn't change everything you do to feel about a team, but man, it feels like it did this past offseason. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens going forward. But you're going to have bad years. Now, bad years could be finishing fourth instead of finishing first. Bad years could be getting eliminated in a knockout game in the conference quarterfinal when you finished first. Bad years could be getting to every final but losing. Bad years could be missing the playoffs. You're going to have bad years. It is impossible to say, I will never have a bad season. Ever, 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 ever. You can't. It doesn't happen that way. That's sports.
Alex Basine on the Twitter side of things has given us a topic for soccer over there tonight.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff for soccer over there tonight. What's Basine throwing into the mix?
Hollywood star Ryan Reynolds wants to turn National League Club Wrexham into a global force. He had his press conference today.
Already on the list. He had a virtual meeting with the Supporters Trust as well. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about La Liga. We'll talk about Liverpool and City 1-1. We'll talk about Serie A. We'll talk about swab testing and legal and illegal and dancing jeans. That was part of a conversation in the Italian media about this whole testing process that Lazio is dealing with. We'll talk about the Euro playoffs that are going on this week. We'll talk about the U.S. men's national team in a friendly this week. Lots of stuff. So 7 o'clock tonight, that's everywhere you normally listen, and the podcast will go out afterwards. So join us for that. We got plenty of MLS stuff to talk about this morning, so we will save Ryan Reynolds for later.
Chris Ashley this morning says, Cowboys, Red Sox, Vols, Atlanta United. 2020's been a tough sports year for yours truly. Thank God for the triumph.
Yeah, you got something out of it, Chris. So, I mean, that's your trade-off. Again, it's sports. I mean, it's just how it goes sometimes. You have some of these bad years, and it happens.
Chris Hutchison. Yay, this wretched season has ended. Let the rebuilding begin. Players to keep. Moreno, Dom, Robinson, Bello, John, Lennon, Gallagher, Adams. Needs, midfield and defensive players, a goalkeeper replacement with a question mark in parentheses. MLS needs, improved/upgraded refereeing and improved VAR.
They need upgraded refereeing. I don't have as much of a problem with VAR as I do in some other leagues, but it needs to improve a little bit. I'll include that all in refereeing in general. That needs to happen. Brad Gazan signed through 24, I think. He signed an extension, 23 or 24. He signed an extension in February. So I don't know if that part's going to happen. What were his other needs?
Midfield and defensive players.
Defensive midfield. And I don't think you need other defensive. I mean, who are you moving out? I think your back line right now is, for next year, Bello and Lennon on the outside, Escobar and Robinson as your center backs. Right now, Meza is in your rotation at center back. Walks is a utility piece across the board. I'm good with that. I don't have a problem with that. I think you need your six. Your six is your biggest thing for me. That's the number one piece that you need to look at if you're looking at a lineup for next year.
Also, Shiva says, after listening to Doug's Southern Fried Soccer podcast, Jason, you mentioned this team will need a secondary goal scorer. We talked about that.
Thank you. Good job realizing it halfway through.
Do you think someone gets trained from within?
We talked about that. We talked about that.
All right, well, then fine. I'm moving on.
It's not a training situation. It is a production. I mean, Tito Villalba produced in 2017, produced less in 2018, didn't produce in 2019. It wasn't a training issue. It was you got to produce. So does Joseph's presence open up more goal-scoring opportunities for Dom, for Moreno, for Barco, or a replacement for Barco? They should. But somebody's got to put the ball in the back of the net more. That needs to happen outside of Joseph being back in the team. He's got to get somebody to help him score goals for this group.
Before I hop into the timeline, you want me to thank somebody?
Yes. Why don't you thank our good friend Steve Apolinsky over in Decatur, GA?
I could do that. Apolinsky & Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here and the SDH network for wrongful death and serious injury matters. His is the firm that you need to have a conversation with, and he is the man to have a conversation with at his own firm. How do you do it? A couple different ways. You can give him a call and get a free consultation, 404-377-9191. You can shoot Steve an email directly, steve@aa-legal.com, or go to the website. The homepage is aa-legal.com. Large device or small, when you hop onto aa-legal.com, you hit the enter key, the return key, the advance, whatever the arrow is on your device. A pop-up window pops up when aa-legal.com pops up, because that's what pop-up windows do. Strangely, they pop up. We still have yet to get independent confirmation if Steve is the individual at the other end of the conversation in the pop-up windows. Perhaps they can help us out with this answer. Whoever is there is there 24/7, 365 and a quarter. So you could have a thought next Tuesday at 4 a.m. Someone will be there to answer your questions at aa-legal.com. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million for judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama, recognized as legal elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, the website for Apolinski & Associates, LLC is aa-legal. Wow, I went way low there. There it is, .com.
And then you broke the fourth wall. Man, that's going to get bad ratings.
Rate of promo is going to give me like a 4.
Yeah, the East German judge might go lower than that.
Russian judge give very poor rating.
Yeah, that's not good. Okay, Winter Wind with a question, and I don't really know the answer to this. So, is there any way technically the players could do what sometimes you'll see in the NFL, where a quarterback and his receivers go hold an independent camp in the offseason? And if so, do you think that might be something Joseph and some of the team might do to prepare for next season? I don't know what the CBA restrictions are. I'm not sure. I guess you could, because, I mean, it does happen in the NFL with their CBA, so I guess you could. There's limitations in what you would get out of it. I mean, could you get Joseph working with a couple of guys to build up his fitness? Sure. But you need full team training to do stuff. And we know that this team will do everything possible to train as much as they can. I mean, Tata reportedly got in trouble for that. The one thing I remember, and this struck me yesterday too, as we were starting to talk about next season, 2017 was a good year. You lost in the first round of the playoffs. Your season ended a little earlier than you thought it might. Tata immediately started working on playing 3 in the back to be better defensively for 2018. And we saw them play 3 in the back at times in 2018 and ended up using that to good effect at the end. Went back and forth between that and a 4-2-3-1. But he was immediately working towards the next year. I'll be curious to see what you're able to do right now with pandemic restrictions, with Stephen Glass as an interim manager, with the CONCACAF game coming up. Like, with all of that, what can you do to get better for 21 now in terms of training? And I don't know. I don't know what the rules are. Usually you get training sessions after your season where that's what Tata used those to work. Some teams generally would just use those as basically kick the ball around and whatever. I'm assuming, because of seeing Cincinnati's announcement now, that maybe they're not doing that right now. But Atlanta's in a whole different situation because of CONCACAF. So really, I don't know, Winterwind. It's a good question. I just don't know how much you would get out of it outside of fitness work, to be perfectly honest. I don't think you have the same effect as you would with a quarterback and receivers building chemistry. I mean, you can a little bit, but you're going to build chemistry in game situations more than in isolated group training. You know, at least you're going to get some of that chemistry built in full team training, but you're going to get it in like preseason matches. That's where it's going to be really important.
Reginald McKee is in this morning. Thank you to you and Mike for the great coverage. We don't take you for granted. I'm still looking forward to watching Soccer Down here on ESPN/Fox Sports, complete with a Monday Night Football tactics table.
Yeah, we're getting a producer for that because I don't trust John's mic on a show like that.
No.
And John's not doing anything with the tactics table because he might knock it over and break it.
I'll have like the long pointing stick, and I just sit there and like move them like shuffleboard on a table. Just have it like a shuffleboard shuffler.
No.
Just like move things around a little bit.
No, you won't.
Move things around a lot.
No.
John Nason's in this morning. I understand that he probably wanted out, but I really think Frank DeBoer would have managed to find 3 more points somewhere else during the season. Still believe the front office did the right thing, though, just putting the season down to 2020, #Overreaction Monday.
Yeah, because it sounds like it wasn't just on the results from Orlando. It was fit, it was culture, it was a lot of different elements that led to that decision. I think it was the right decision. Could Frank have found 3 more points? Not if the culture was as bad as it was. I don't know if you would have found the points that you did find. It took a while until I think we saw the best of Atlanta United with Stephen Glass. I think the Dallas game was where it turned, and then you just weren't able to keep it consistently from there. But that was where it felt like, okay, this feels different now.
Yeah.
But you couldn't consistently do that, and you didn't have enough production in the final third. You just didn't. So I don't know if it would have. I really don't. I do think it was the right decision. Would it have been different if you'd waited? Would it have been different if you'd waited till the end of the year? I don't know. If the off-the-field issues were as big as they have been alluded to, then it could have gotten worse and made it more difficult to fix later. I feel like, at a minimum, the slate is clear now for whoever comes in as the new manager. You don't have the baggage from whatever was going on in the locker room and between the players and Frank. You don't have that anymore. It's clean. And that was probably a big part of what Stephen Glass's job description was. So now you can come in and start fresh, and that's going to be a very important factor for the new manager.
Tony Jabroni says, about 5 or 6 weeks until CCL fever. Let's go Atlanta United. # Unite and Conquer.
Yeah, you get a game. I mean, look, it's a game. You get a game. We'll get a game to talk about. We'll get a game to dig into what that lineup could be. I'll be very interested to see if you see a couple of new faces. Eric Lopez, potentially. Players from the twos, potentially. Has to be players who were signed to pro deals, so it can't be a Coleman Gannon. It can't be a Will Riley. I'll be very excited to see what that team could look like in that game, and then you get to analyze it. Is it going to go? Are you going to go young? Or are you going to throw everything at the wall and see if you can overturn a 3-0 deficit? I mean, how do you approach it? But it's another opportunity to get back on the field, and it's an opportunity that not every team has to start preparations for 21. That can be valuable if you get the most out of it.
Bart's in this morning on a # Overreaction Monday. He says, we should feel aggrieved for the terrible decisions on the 2 PK calls, but we still allowed 2 soft goals against the run of play. I knew Columbus would score as soon as VAR took away our penalty. It's disheartening how mentally soft this team was. There's another point.
Yeah, it's easy to say that, and there's times where I've had concerns about it. I don't really have it in this one because you know what it all means by this point. If we're talking mid-season and you react badly to a call going against you, all right, we're having a different discussion. You know that when you have 2 penalties not called, one questionable but I think should have been called, the other one was called and then taken away from you, you know how hard that is. So I'm gonna wash that one away. The second goal I don't have as much of an issue with because you get caught with everybody up because you have to. You don't. You're not happy 1-0 down. You've got to score 2 goals in the second half. You don't have the whole half to make it happen. You've got to really push the envelope. You get caught. And then even still, I mean, I think it just hasn't even been talked about. I don't know why. You recover. Miles Robinson recovers. He gets in the right spot. He slides in to block the shot. He doesn't even block it with his foot that's extended. It comes off his knee and then goes through the legs of Brad Kazan. Yeah. Like, it's still deflected in. I mean, it's just to add to 2020-ness, it's that. You do recover, and you do get in a good spot, and you don't block it away. You block it somehow through the legs of your goalkeeper because welcome to 2020. What's the other point? Were there positives? Yes. This was certainly a better game than in MLS's back, but in the end, none of the positives added up to a good result, and that's what matters. # Overreaction. No, that's absolutely what matters. You created 12 chances, or 10 chances. I saw 12. Doug said 10. I haven't kept going back to check sources. Moreno created a couple. Dom created a couple. You were far better than you were at MLS's back. I totally agree with that, but you get judged by the result. You had to win. You didn't win. I do think you have a serious grievance with those penalties, but you still didn't win. Your season can't come down to referee decisions. You can't let it, and it did. So, all right, let's see who else is next on the list today. The Colonel is in this morning. He says, to those who say MLS sucks,
I say it's the best soccer in this country. To those who say pro is terrible, I say they are the best referees in this country. Hashtag Somos Atlanta. Hashtag come on the town.
Those are, accurate statements. MLS is the best league in this country because it's better than the quality-wise than USL Championship and USL League One and NISA and everybody else. It is. Pro is the best referees in the country. Pro needs to help develop better referees because U.S. Soccer isn't doing a good enough job in that realm. Because referees need help not just at MLS, but across all the leagues that Pro serves, which is USL Championship, League One, NISA. You watch NPSL, you watch USL League 2, you watch your local amateur league, you watch your high-level youth league. You need more quality referees. The level of play, and most importantly to me, the pace of play, has improved faster than referees have developed. It's went past where referees were. And now referees need more help. There needs to be more investment in referee development. There needs to be an actual plan for professional referee development. These things need to be in place so everything is better. The quality is better. It has to be there. And I think VAR is something that this league needs to look at in a way that other leagues do. I think MLS has done generally better with VAR because I think they're less involved. That's good. Not yesterday, but in general, that's good. They need to not have as many current referees working VAR. It needs to be, and I think he got it wrong yesterday, but it needs to be a Hilario Grajeda, who has been a referee for a long time and now is not working games in the middle. It needs to be Jurcevic, who's the same way. It needs to be Corey Rockwell, potentially, when he retires. It needs to be guys who are not working on the field anymore. Those veterans who understand it and focus specifically on VAR roles and understand exactly what a video assistant referee is supposed to do. That all needs to improve. You can say they're the best now, absolutely, but they need to get better. So I don't have a problem saying that. That's why I don't agree with the conversation that Ismail Elfath is a terrible referee. I think he's maybe the best one in the country. But he had a bad game yesterday, in my opinion. That's my opinion. He might not feel like he had a bad game. He might look at it and say, man, I wish I'd handled this differently. I wish I'd done this differently. Most referees do. Referees are very, very hard on themselves. You know, these are guys who put in a ton of work into this. Like, they do their best. There's not a referee in the league that just doesn't care about their job. That needs to be understood, even when we do criticize. Elfath is a good referee. He had a bad day, in my opinion. Players have bad days. Coaches have bad days. Referees have bad days. Happens. Yeah. But, yes, they're the best. They need to be better. The overall core of pro needs to be better, just like referees across the country need to be better.
Yeah, and the next question in the queue was from JBG, and you answered it. Why does Atlanta United not get proper officiating? But you're discussing
this year has been the most frustrating. There's no question about that. Is it because of the 2020-ness of it all? Is it just the way the year's worked out? Is it just Atlanta's year to have bad calls? I don't know. But there's been a few that have been head-scratchers. And I'll even put the Caden Clark one, that goal, to the side. That's an interpretation issue. Pro has been fairly consistent in interpreting it the way that their referees did on that day. I disagree with the interpretation, but they've been consistent in that. The Figal one was awful because it's a player safety issue. And the fact that they apologized to the club but didn't apologize publicly, where they've apologized publicly in many other situations, right, I got a massive problem with. I can't remember which one it was. Oh, the Brooks Lennon one where there should have been a penalty. I don't think it changes the result of that game, but you add it to the list of, we should have given you a penalty, which you had 2 in a week last year with Pitti. Fouled against New York City, fouled against Portland, where Pro came out and said, we missed that. That should have been a penalty. That's frustrating. That stuff is very frustrating. The penalty yesterday, the penalty in against Cincinnati in MLS's back, I feel like they got that one wrong. Lots of things that had effects on matches that are not good. I don't expect it to be the norm. I hope that it is just a 2020 crappy thing that we can wash away once the calendar turns. But it is what it is. There are other There are other teams in the league that feel like they were hard done by referees as well. I think it was a bad year for referees. I think there are some explanations for it. It needs to be better going forward. There needs to be more accountability as well. That was where I got frustrated as pro referees had a bad year, which I understand reasons why they could have had a bad year this year. I get it. But then they got defensive about it, and then they stopped communicating. That's a massive problem. You can't run from it. You can't say, oh, no, we didn't. We did everything correct. And, okay, we made mistakes, but we're not going to talk about them publicly anymore like we did before. You can't do that. That doesn't help anything. That doesn't do anything good. So, it's not a conspiracy against Atlanta. It was a bunch of bad calls that went against Atlanta this year. You still had enough to get into the postseason, and you didn't. So it just made it harder for that to happen, but you still should have got into the postseason with results that you should have been able to control yourself.
Next question comes from Chris Hutchison. Did anyone figure out who Escobar was going at on the sidelines after his ejection?
I have not heard. If they have, I have not seen any write-ups of what happened there. And, again, some of this is down to 2020 as well. Like, we would normally be on site and could have had a chance to see what was going on and all of that. Other reporters would have been on site. I know Jacob Myers from the Columbus Dispatch said it was a Columbus staff member.
Right.
I couldn't tell when they kept showing the replays because they weren't showing wide shots of it. I couldn't tell where he was going because it didn't look like somebody who was in team gear. It looked like maybe somebody was with the fourth official, but Myers of the Columbus Dispatch said it was a Columbus staff member. I don't know what happened in the whole sequence. I feel like a second yellow there was a very poor decision from Elfath. The foul did not result in a yellow, in my opinion. Maybe feels like when Nagbe left his legs out and made contact with Escobar in that moment. Escobar's not trying to step on Darlington Nagbe. He's not trying to hurt Darlington Nagbe. There's no intent for anything there to get a second yellow. But it was a quick yellow from Elfath because, going back in my head the way I saw it, Escobar's walking off the field immediately after the foul. So Elfath has either shown him the yellow or tells him, hey, that's it, you're gone. That's just the second yellow. And then they cut back to Escobar going at somebody there. Jacob Meyer said that this person wouldn't ever, he's a great person, all these different things, and he would never say anything to get that kind of reaction. He was saying something. Judging from the way his body was moving, he was speaking to Franco Escobar. I don't think Escobar walked up to somebody who didn't say a word to him and got in his face. I also don't know about the way this person fell down. It didn't look like Franco Escobar shoved him or punched him or headbutted him or anything like that. Felt like a little bit of a reach. I don't know. I'm not there. We didn't get great angles of it, so I have no idea. But nothing else has really been talked about other than he's a good guy who's been with the crew for a long time. That's all I got.
Rich Ransom is in this morning. A couple different things. First, in all capital letters, Union Supporters Shield champions, followed by 5 exclamation points. Great to win a trophy after a long 10 years of disappointment. Now that we won something, in all caps, fire everyone, hire Tata, sunshine pumpers.
10 years, y'all, for Philadelphia. And they were bad in some of those 10 years, too. They were not a fun team to watch for some of that time. It's not easy. And Philadelphia, one reason it took longer is that they don't spend the same way Atlanta does. They had to do some of it themselves. They had to get the right people in place. Jim Curtin's part of that. Ernst Tanner is a big part of that. Ernie Stewart before that planted some seeds. They got the academy developing talent. They made the right signings. They made a bold move going into the season when they let Harris Medunjanin go and they brought in Jose Martinez. When I first started to see Martinez play, I'm like, all right, now this is a Philadelphia team that can win something because it made the midfield diamond work better. Montero and Bedoya didn't have to defend as much. They could push higher and impact the team going forward. It made everything work better. That was the missing piece, in my opinion. They've been the best team all year. Even when they haven't been in first, they've been the best team, in my opinion. They're the most consistent team. They don't have a mega star, but they're the best team in the league. They're the favorites to win MLS Cup. They're the best. I mean, Supporters Shield this year, yes, it's a little different than it normally is. Does it have the same prestige? No, I don't think it does. I don't think it would have to start the year anyway because you weren't going to play everybody. They were still the best team in the regular season, and I think they are the best team. I think they're the favorite to win MLS Cup.
He also follows it up by asking if isn't there an expansion draft this year?
There
this
is.
was during FC Cincinnati's roster release.
There is for Austin FC, but this is normally how it goes because remember, you have to still do your protected list, and that'll come out after MLS Cup. And players that are out of contract or you didn't pick up the option on, you'll also have the reentry process that everybody can be part of. But they'll protect people sometimes that they're still negotiating with if they're out of contract or whatever. So they'll protect their rights. We'll see it. I mean, Austin will have an expansion draft unless they completely scrap that, but I don't think there were any plans to.
Chris Hutchison, in Barco's defense, the refs in MLS have let him get hacked to pieces during games. It's atrocious what's allowed to continually, persistently, one might say, occur by the poor refereeing in this league. Hashtag Overreaction Monday.
Yeah, I mean, Barco's been fouled a ton. There's just no other way around it. It's very frustrating. And for a player who plays the way he does, I'm sure it drives him crazy. I'm sure it affects him mentally. I'm sure it doesn't help him play his best when he knows he's going to get whacked every single game. I mean, I'm going to pull up his history in MLS and see if I can pull that up very quickly in terms of how much he has been fouled. Okay. Man, I might not be able to from here. It's just very difficult. There we go. So fouls. This season, he's going to end up with being fouled more than he has in any other season. Who Scored has kind of got it a little awkward because they separated the MLS's back tournament out. But 3.2, 3.3 fouls per game. I mean, let's actually take it back if I can do this. Oh, man, they don't let me do it that way. That's disappointing. So that's per game. That's not per 90, which I'd like to have the per 90 on him because of just coming off the bench some at times. So 3.2 or 3 this season, 2.8 last year, 2.2 in 2018. All of those but 2018 are more than he was fouled per game at Independiente for the stats that Who Scored has. It's a lot. This year's even worse than normal. Last year, he was lost because of a foul for the second half of the season. That's incredibly frustrating. There's not a justification for that. That's not a good thing. That shouldn't be something that the league is happy about. It can't be something Atlanta United's happy about because they invested significantly in him, and it's affected him. Shouldn't be that way. It has to be better. Persistent infringement has to be called. Skilled players, fouls have to be called against them. There should not be a campaign or complaint about he holds the ball too long. There's nothing in the laws of the game against holding the ball. You should be allowed to hold the ball. You should be allowed to dribble. You shouldn't be allowed to be fouled all the time. He gets fouled a lot. He gets fouled more than anybody else in the league. It's very frustrating.
Morning, Mr. Green. Hopefully we have answered your question about the roster against Club America so far this morning. Tafka is in, and he says, it's time to find the heir apparent keeper. Got a couple of years left at Gazan holding it down. Need that time to groom for 2023.
Yeah, and you've got guys in the pipeline, and it is 2023. I think Winterwind also had that in the Twitch pitch. Not 24. Thank you. You've got Alec Can, who has shown in limited time, most recently in an extended period of time, was the first half of 2017, that he could potentially be a number one in this league. You've got, right now in the system, you've got Brendan Moore, who hasn't shown you a lot. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities to show you a lot. So you're going by what's happening in training that we're not seeing. You've got Ben Lundgaard with Atlanta United 2, who has been on MLS rosters before. I think one of the reasons he came here was to stake his claim to potentially be that person. I don't know if he did enough with Atlanta United 2 to get to that point. So then you go a step further. We'll see if the Novo loan happens with Lanús. It was supposed to happen for 2021, so he would be coming in next year. I don't know if I would assume that is with the first team, but he could play some for the second team. He would be a person, because he's a youth international for Argentina. He would be somebody that you would think could compete for that role. Justin Garces at UCLA would be somebody that you would think could compete for that role. He's been in U.S. youth national teams. He was part of your academy. You can sign him to a homegrown deal. And Vicente Reyes, who is the youngest of that group, but played in Atlanta United 2 matches this season. He's a Chilean youth international. So you've got young goalkeepers coming. Remember, the timeline for a goalkeeper is a little different. You can have a goalkeeper break through at 25 to 28. So the fact that you've got a Can in there around that age, you've got a Brendan Moore a little bit younger than that, you've got a Lundgaard a little bit younger than that, and then you've got Reyes and Garces and potentially Novo, who are even younger than that, you've got a pretty good pipeline. You're going to make some decisions going forward on who you put investment in to continue that improvement. But yeah, you've got a decent pipeline right now, and you do have to start looking ahead. You have to in general. I think you have to at goalkeeper as well, even though you have Brad Gazan under contract for a few more years. You got to get ready for that next person. That's part of the process of building that overall depth chart, where you're looking at not just Jeff Lorenowitz this season, but you're looking at Will Riley in 2 or 3 years playing in a role like that. Can he get there? You got to look at those projections over time.
Jake Michaels, do you think there could be some PTSD within this group next year, or some sort of psychological hurdle to overcome, as opposed to previous years? It just doesn't feel like there's a level of belief or winning mentality within the group. Could moving some players be a way to fix?
It could. I think a new season is more than anything. I mean, just getting back to some normalcy will help with that too. A new manager is going to be the biggest thing that's going to change that and wipe that away, because they're coming in without any of that baggage. Again, I think that's key. This year, yeah, it weighed on you. Again, I think that's part of your reaction to the penalty being taken away yesterday, is you're not scoring a ton of goals. You just had one handed to you, and then it's yanked away from you. That's a letdown, and it showed. You had a letdown on the field. So I think next year will help. I also think, and this is one of those things about the sport that is pretty magical at times, I also think getting fans back in the stands will help a lot. And I hope that fans understand that role that they can play. And you can be angry about a roster decision, or you can, be frustrated with the player's performance, but when you're in the stands, you can affect the outcome of a match by supporting the players in the same shirt that you're wearing. You can have an impact. So take advantage of it. When you get back in there and you can do that, do it and help. Because there were moments in home games this year where I felt like, man, in the past, this group would have been lifted to a higher performance by the fan base. You need that. So I understand all the frustration, but when you're in the building, you're part of the match too. And they didn't have that this year, and they needed it. And they definitely need it next year as they try to have a better season.
Nathan Pugh is back in, and he says, remember when John said #fart? The highlight of his morning so far.
You did say that. That was kind of silly.
Well, it's what it was. It's what it said. I mean, it's fart with a hashtag. Therefore, it's #fart.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm being literal.
Mm-hmm.
I like pancakes. Oh, that reminds me. Did you see what the new thing on the Crystal menu is for their breakfast?
You're very excited about this, aren't you?
Oh, the country fried steak biscuit.
You're very excited about this, aren't you?
Complete with gravy, yes. I'm absolutely ecstatic about it. Of course, I'd actually would have to drive past or into a Crystal parking lot, but the concept is amazing.
Why do you have to take a shot at Crystal at the end of that? That's not fair.
No, I'm taking a shot at my own travel habits right now more than anything else, because considering I spend most of my time at home.
Okay. I don't think Crystal's on Grubhub.
Well, aren't they on like one of them?
They might be, actually. I don't know.
That's just I literally thought that they might be on one of those drive dealies, but
You're being questioned on a couple of things. First off, as
sure.
Chris Ashley says in all caps, I thought you don't eat breakfast, John.
I don't, but the concept there's nothing wrong with getting a country fried steak biscuit and holding it till later.
No, that is wrong. You don't hold it till later. Anyway. Winter Wind also says it's not worth getting excited about. Go grab one at Bojangles instead.
Okay, cool. Nothing wrong with that. I would once again have to actually leave the Office HD and go past said Bojangles, but I appreciate that. Yes.
Okay.
I'm down with that idea.
All right. What else we got on Twitter? Do we have a lot more on Twitter? Do we have a little bit more on Twitter?
We have one more on Twitter.
Wow. Okay. It's 10:30 and we've almost gotten through Twitter. Jeez. Okay.
And you might want to get your stats on Barco back, because Chris Hutchison asked, how many games has Barco missed from being hacked into injury status?
I don't have a list of that. I mean, just looking at what... Let me see if I can pull it real easily. Off the top of my head... Man, no, that doesn't help me. Let me try one more way. Off the top of my head, his first injury here had nothing to do with getting hacked. It was, I think, a quad or a hamstring in 2018. So he made his debut a little bit later and then played 2018. We know about the off-the-field issue that Tata Martino kept him out of the team for longer than anybody else did. And then he became a reserve in that group, which was the best spot for him. We understand that. 2018, he played in 31 games and started in 19. 2019, he played in 18 and started in 14, and that's the one where I feel like there were games missed because of what happened. So he played in the U20 World Cup. Let me see how they got this set up. Yeah. Played in the U20 World Cup. Last game there was June 4th. Came back, played in the Open Cup game on June 18th. And that's where he got injured. And then played twice. Played against D.C. on July 21st. I'm looking back to see how much he actually played. Or no, he didn't play. He was on the bench. So he didn't play in that one. Then the LAFC game, and then the All-Star game, which I think he made a short appearance. So he missed a good bit of time in 19, at least a month right there. And he wasn't starting games once he was back for a while. I think it was later in August. So he missed about a couple of months of time after coming back from the U20 World Cup. And so that's probably 8 to 12 games, depending on that schedule. And then minutes where he's coming off the bench instead of playing. So a decent bit. And then this year, we don't know the nature. We know it was a quadriceps thing from what he said, and there was inflammation, but we don't know if that was caused by a kick or if that was a pull in the 7 games I think he missed this season. We don't know where that factored in. So he's definitely missed a number of games due to being kicked directly in the Columbus incident. We don't know some of the others if it is accumulation or if it is a kick that caused it. The quad one is the question I have. It could have been a kick, it could have been a pull. We don't know.
Michael head in quickly with photographic evidence. He says, completely agree on the influence of the supporters attending. Atlanta United probably was hurt more than any other team. The wife and I attended 4 matches this year, including Nashville away and the 2 home COVID matches, hoping for a normal 2021.
Yeah, I hope. Sounds like there's some good news this morning from Pfizer about vaccines, although that's not going to be an overnight process at all. There's going to be a lot to do, but at least it is good news and good progress. I don't know if 2021 will be normal from the start. I'm honestly not expecting that it will be. Unless they start later, and then it is. But then you have to deal with not playing for a longer period of time and what that could look like. So I don't know. I think it'll be twofold. I mean, it'll be, one, getting bodies in the building. But two, it will be getting bodies in the building, supporting this team while you're in the building, no matter what. And that's a different mentality than American sports. You know, there is a mentality that, and I understand it because, yeah, it's part of the deal. You know, you buy a ticket, you can boo, you can yell against whoever you want, you can do whatever you want. You bought a ticket. Absolutely true. In this sport, though, there's a little bit of, maybe it's a lack of understanding about the effect that you have. Maybe you don't think that you have as much of an effect, and you do. I don't know. That's why there's always the argument, like, you're not a fan, you're a supporter. If you call a supporter a fan, they get mad. Supporters are the ones who are singing nonstop, who are chanting nonstop, who are making noise nonstop, and when things get harder for the home team, they get louder to support them even more. That's what's needed, and it does have an effect in the sport. It has an effect, like you think about it in American football, where, you know, late in a game, the other team has the ball, and you're making as much noise as possible, trying to have them have a false start. It's that, but it's for a 90-minute stretch. Like, it has an impact. I mean, I've watched this team find levels of reserves, fatigue, the overcoming it, you know, just everything because of how loud it gets in that building at times. That's a special effect, and you didn't have that this year. But it's going to be needed next year. It's definitely going to be needed, and it's something that I hope maybe because you didn't have it here that there's an understanding that it's a valuable part of the whole experience and a valuable part of the process. Burned with a question now that we're getting into the Twitch pitch. Did you guys discuss the possibility of loaning out some of our players to other leagues that are playing between now and April? Not yet, and I think we need to get some clarification on, and there's time to, because they can't be loaned out until January in the window when it opens, and you'll know by then what the season looks like. If you're not playing until April, May, what have you, and you're not even starting training camp until middle of February, let's say, yeah, you can loan guys out. I think you could loan guys out for 2-3 months for sure. No problem with that. You're going to have to figure out that decision about, are they going to be part of your group when the season does start? And if you decide that, like, George Campbell isn't, or Tyler Wolff isn't, but you can loan them somewhere where they can be part of a group now and finish out the rest of that season, like let's say it's Aberdeen, for example, just because you have a relationship, yeah, do it. But I think right now it's hard to even guess because we don't know what the timeline is for MLS next year. Once we know that, and they'll know by the time they'd have to make these loans, then I think we'll have a better sense of it. But I would expect that that'll happen in some cases. I do, for sure. CBA aspects, there's really not any. There's really not any massive issues with it. It's just from a roster construction perspective. You loan them out. You can recall them early, so you can set up the loan to where, let's say it's Campbell. Let's use him as an example. Let's say you loan Campbell out on January 1st when the window opens, and he goes to Aberdeen. It's picking a club because there's a relationship. He goes to Aberdeen. He can't go there until the window opens, so he goes there the first day the window opens. You can already have that in place. And then you could say that he is only going to be at Aberdeen for 12 weeks or 16 weeks until he comes back into Atlanta United training camp. Or you could say that, you know, it's a loan for 6 months, but there's an option to recall him early depending on the start of the MLS season. Like, there's ways you can structure it for sure. And Byrne makes a good point. A lot of European teams need bodies right now, and they need them for cheap because everybody's very thin and you're playing a ton of games. So there's opportunities. The problem is you can't loan them now to that team because their windows are closed. So they can't go there. But January 1, when the window opens, yep. And I would not be shocked at all to see not just Atlanta do it, but quite a few MLS teams do it. For some of their younger players, some of their guys on the fringes who need time, and you don't know when you're going to get it here, you're going to need to, if you're MLS as a league, the league office has to know by MLS Cup, which is a little over a month away, what the 2021 season timeline is going to look like. At least in principle.
Yeah.
Because teams then need to be able to say, all right, we're not going to play games until April 15th. All right, that means we backdated. Our training camp could open March 1st. That means we got 2 months with nothing for some of these young players. Let's loan them out at least for the 2 months. In some cases, let's loan them out for 6 months until the next window opens and we can bring them back. Let's figure that out. Or until their season overseas ends. Because you could bring them back if the MLS windows are roughly the same as they usually are, which I would assume would be. That first window that never closes until like the beginning of May, which is awkward, but MLS could bring players back. So if that's the same and you're going to start April 15th, you could say, you know what, George Campbell, we're going to loan you to Aberdeen until April 1st. Because you're going to be playing, you're going to be training, you're going to come back here, you're going to jump back in training camp, have a couple weeks to get ready for the MLS season. That could work. So Wolf and Campbell would be the two that I would be looking at in that case, who didn't get a lot of time this year, who need time. There you go. Maybe even a Jackson Conway who could get an opportunity like that, depending on his status for next year. I would assume he'd still be under contract with the organization one way or another. So that's where I'm at. More questions from the Twitch pitch. If you're listening outside of Twitch and you want to ask questions on Twitter, we're still taking them. I will check the email account as well because sometimes I miss that one. Anything else on Twitter, real quick?
No, we are caught up on the Twitters, sir.
Okay. Any questions from you?
Any questions from me?
I'm guessing that's a no.
Well, I
when
mean,
you say wow,
I always defer to what's going on Twitter. I mean, for me, really, and you mentioned George Campbell as a player that, you would have liked to have seen get more playing time, and it would be a prime candidate to be loaned out. And you mentioned Wolf, you mentioned Campbell. I would like to see them obviously get more minutes somewhere. And if there is that gap time that we're looking at for Major League Soccer, I would like for them to have homes so they can continue to develop if it's not going to be here, because the schedule is going to be pushed forward. And I mean that in the calendar sense, not in, just we're going to move it down the road. I'd like to see those guys get homes, and I like the idea just because of the relationship. And I know it's an easy example to give, but I like the idea of sending them to a place like an Aberdeen. And we know that Darren and Carlos have other relationships outside of that, but to give them that opportunity to get those reps so when they come back to Major League Soccer, whenever that time is, they're not just sitting there on the vine and it's a bunch of time that got wasted.
Yeah, you got to figure that out, and there's going to be a lot of teams who are in that boat for sure. Burned with an interesting idea, and I want to double-check this to make sure. I think he's right. Tyler Wolf to Red Bull Salzburg on loan because Jesse Marsh probably played with Tyler's father, and he did at the Chicago Fire. I was pretty sure they'd crossed over there. Jesse played 200 times for the Fire between 98 and 2005. Wolf was there for a while, and then he went to Kansas City, but they overlapped for quite a few years. So,
but then once again, the point that comes in my head is he going there just to be there, or is there going to be the idea of getting some playing time to continue to improve your craft?
It's a different conversation, John, because if the options are go there to be there or sit at home, then go there to be there. You're going on loan. You're not going. It's not a transfer.
No.
You're conflating transfer situations with going to a team and playing with this situation. This is different. This is don't sit at home for 3 months until we're waiting for the season to start. Go over there and train. And if you get to play, great. But go do something rather than stay home.
Okay. All right, you see what I've done with the 2 cups for those watching on the Twitch pitch?
I don't want to know what you're about to do with 2 cups.
Well, no. But you saw initially that I had them paired like this, right?
Yes, I did.
So now what I'm doing is I'm taking the Diet Dr. Pepper cup and I'm separating it from the other one, which means only one thing.
You're finally getting into caffeine?
I'm finally getting into caffeine.
Well, we've got a lot to look forward to in the last 14 minutes of the show, John.
I know.
And stoppage time, probably.
But I will be, programming note, I'll be joining from South Georgia tonight and tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So I've got a drive ahead of me, too, as a part of this.
Oh. Well, you're going to need to get the Mountain Dew Kickstart. You're going to need a little more extra juice.
Probably, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Wolf to Salzburg. I like that idea, Bern. Let's make it happen. Bello to the Bundesliga. I think Bello might need the time off. We'll see about that one. Maybe a short-term loan for Bello. But, yeah, he might need time off. Campbell and Wyke to Aberdeen. I'm cool with that.
Love that.
Chris Ashley, can we discuss the ridiculous-looking Supporters Shield stand-in they used? I did not see this. I saw some pictures, but I thought they were, like, pictures of a TV, so I didn't have a great look at what Philadelphia was doing with this whole situation. I didn't know they used a stand-in. Why couldn't they get the actual trophy there? What's wrong with this?
I don't know. I'm looking.
Okay, here's a picture. That's pretty ridiculous. What was that thing made out of? Foil? That's weird.
That looks like some superhero kind of a Captain America thing that they just literally. That is literally what they got.
Well, yesterday is what they got. I mean, I would assume they got the real thing here at some point. It had to be in two places, and I guess people didn't really expect Philly to win, which doesn't make sense to me. Philly would be the one that I would have the real trophy at, and Toronto would be the one where the stand-in would be.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that in 2018, the real trophy was in Toronto because Atlanta had the opportunity to win it. That's where the real trophy was, and it ultimately wasn't handed over to Atlanta at that time because they lost to Toronto on decision day. But why would the real trophy not be in Philadelphia? They were the ones who were in control of the situation.
Yeah, literally that thing looks like somebody just drew like a cartoon CGI on a photo.
Is that the same one that the Red Bulls got in 2018, or did they even do a presentation after they won and Atlanta lost? I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look. But they need a better stand-in trophy. And the stand-in shouldn't have been in Philadelphia. They were the favorites the whole time.
Yes.
Man.
Rich Ransom, what happened here?
Rich has nothing to do with it. Why are you yelling at Rich?
No, it's like I want him to get to the bottom of it for us.
No, he's not going to know. Like it has nothing to do with Rich. It has to do with the Independent Supporters Council and the Supporters Shield Foundation. I'm just glad they actually allowed it to be given out. But still, why was the real one not with the team that had the opportunity to control? Okay. Anyway,
I'm with you.
You're flapping your arms like a goal was conceded.
I'm with you. I'm with you here. It's like why was the real one not in Philly?
All right, let's move on. Katie says didn't see him play at Tigres, but me parece que Dam's Centros have been good this year. Looking forward to a Yursef Conexion next season. Is that going to be a thing? Are we going to go Yursef? Could be. That might be something that Katie Weaver has just started.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm intrigued. You're going to drive it into the ground, and I'm going to hate it. And I'm apologizing to Katie already because this is what John does.
Yursef. I've already started driving.
Stop. Let's see. So Chris was in and out. He was getting COVID tested. Hope all is good. Wanted to point out that Atlanta can't have anyone taken in the expansion draft this year because of Vasquez getting drafted last season. Is that accurate? Vasquez got drafted in the last one, but you had two teams in the last one. Yes, they can have somebody drafted. They can't have somebody drafted in this year and next year, I think, because remember it was supposed to be Austin and Charlotte. Charlotte's pushed back a year. I would assume they're going to make it like they have in the past where you can't lose somebody in each one of those. You can lose somebody in one of them. I think they could have somebody drafted. We'll have to see if rules get posted and how everything changes. But I think that's not accurate, Chris. Not 100% sure. You missed the Colonel's tweet again. You keep missing the Colonel's follow-up tweets on when you say everything's done.
Well, now that I've finally found it where he links to Weeby's elements on the magnet.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, he sent it to me. He says, how a Captain America shield complete with a 150-pound force magnet became the Supporters Shield. I'm told the true forged by the Supporters Shield didn't arrive from L.A. in time, so the Union got creative.
Okay.
Okay, so here's Weeby's.
Well, then LAFC's to blame, because why didn't they get the thing out sooner?
They wanted to hang on to it that much longer.
Well, that's wrong. That's bad. Then you got to yell at the LAFC supporters.
Yeah.
Or the LAFC club. Sorry, go ahead.
So here's Weeby's train. He says they were about to get a 16-inch pizza tray covered with a vinyl sticker when someone said,
that would have
well,
been awesome.
I do know a guy with a shield. Turns out the web manager's fiancé sister's boyfriend is the proud owner of a full Captain America costume.
Hold on. The webmaster's fiance's sister's boyfriend
is the proud owner of a full Captain America costume. We're not talking Halloween. Legit. His name is Jeremy. He lives in Medford, which is quite literally Brendan Aronson's hometown. He told the Union he wasn't a sports fan, but it sounded like a cool idea. The team drove to Medford, got the shield, and used a heat gun to put the vinyl Supporters Shield over top. The magnet on the back, powerful enough for it to stick and hold to the back of the costume, like I said, legit, was so strong the heat guns got stuck to it during the process of applying the vinyl. End result was what you got. And Weeby says, I just keep reading web manager's fiancé sister's boyfriend back over and over and over. I love this league.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yell at Los Angeles FC.
Yes, yell at
What
Los
are
Angeles
they
FC.
doing? Why can't they get the thing shipped out to Philadelphia in time?
Thank you, Colonel.
Craziness. Man, now I'm mad at LAFC. That's embarrassing. Cool resourcefulness from Philadelphia. It is better than the pizza tray, although that would have been kind of funny in and of itself.
That's awesome.
But, man.
Handing out pizza to the Philadelphia Union players as a part of it. It's like you hand the slices out first and then you raise the pizza tray.
No, John, no, that's terrible. That's way too much. Just, it would have been a pizza tray with a sticker on it, I guess. This is better, but yeah, this is ridiculous. Okay. One question from Ricky. Are you going to wash the 2 cups that you're using for beverages this morning?
Well, the one that's done with the Diet Dr. Pepper, that goes into the dishwasher, sure. But since the second one has drink in it, it's coming with me.
Well, yeah, nobody said you needed to pour it out and wash it. I mean, just making sure you're going to wash them after you use them.
Yeah, well, duh.
He says, well, duh. When it comes to food or drink. Yeah, okay. We've learned that he doesn't get to say, well, duh, about food or drink, anything. All right, Burn.
Drake Hills has confirmed out of Nashville that Annabelle Godoy has sustained a left hamstring injury rehabbing in Nashville during the international window.
Okay, so he is not joining Panama. That's the news there. He's not going to be playing against the United States.
Right. His 100th cap for Panama will have to wait.
Okay. All right, burned about Jesse Marsh getting very high grades for working with young players, Holland, etc. They have enough games right now to play everybody. They also have 6 positive cases right now. That is accurate. They pulled everybody back from going on international duty, and we'll get into a little more of that tonight on Soccer Over There. That is an issue at the moment, but you can't get anybody in at the moment. It's going to be January. You're going to have cases happen after that, too. So you're going to need some extra bodies. Maybe Tyler Wolf gets some time with Red Bull Salzburg. Even just the training would be good. Chris Ashley, thanks for subscribing on Twitch. We appreciate it. That's a big one. Thanks to everybody who subscribes on Twitch. It helps us grow. It helps the show. Thanks to everybody who is on the Patreon as well, who takes part in buying stuff from our little store on Teespring. Yes. Signs up for Fanatis through us. All that kind of stuff is very helpful in us trying to grow. And, now that we're going into an Atlanta off season, although there is a CONCACAF game, there will be plenty to talk about. We're not going to go anywhere. We're going to keep doing our shows like we always do. But you start looking ahead at next year and what that can look like, and there's some things we want to do going forward that hopefully we will be able to do, and hopefully we'll have the resources to do. So stay tuned. We'll try to keep adding more things. If you have programming ideas that you would like to share with us or things you would like to add to the SDH universe, please send us a message. Let us know what's on your mind. I can't say we can do everything, but it's good to know what you guys like or don't like or want to hear more of, or what we're not doing that you'd like to hear us do, et cetera, et cetera. So please do that. Shiva with a question. What would be the number one question you guys would ask the front office if you were allowed on the call for today? I mean, we can be on the call today, but this is more of, it's not really my role. That's why I don't ask questions on these calls. I listen to a lot of them, but it's more for the media who is reporting on this in a different way than we are to ask their questions. I mean, the questions that I would expect to see ask and get answered, it's really nothing different that I would want to ask. You're not going to get a list of coaches that they're talking to. That's not going to happen. Maybe some of the characteristics you are looking for in that hire. That would be good to know. What areas in the roster have you identified as potential upgrades for next year, or potential, targets in the market for next year? What are your expectations of what the market looks like for MLS in January? I think that's a valid question. I don't know if there's an answer to it right now, but that's a question because I don't know. I don't know if anybody really truly knows, but it'd be interesting to hear where their head is at right now about where that goes. I think it's characteristics about the manager. I think it's potential areas you're looking at with the roster. I think a lot of times people want the questions to be, who is the manager going to be? You don't have an answer to that. Who are you interviewing? You're never going to get an answer to that.
Right.
Who is going to be traded? You're not going to get an answer to that. Like it's stuff that are bigger picture to me that I think is interesting in terms of what are you looking for? What positions on the field do you feel like you need more depth in? What positions do you need a starter in? Stuff like that. That's where I'll be curious to see.
Yeah, and for me, along the lines of the question that was asked to Jeff yesterday, I would probably ask, what's the biggest lesson or the biggest takeaway that you have as an organization about this season?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. What did you learn from this crazy 2020 year that will help you going forward?
Right.
What do you have any idea of what the long-term effects of 2020 and COVID and all that's going to be on the club? I don't know if that's really understood yet, but those are all like areas that I think are good. Okay, so Chris, no worries about when you did the subscription. Thank you. Yeah. Colonel, making sure we saw everything. I'm getting caught up on the Twitch pitches. You can tell, Colonel. Thank you for sharing that. I blame John for not seeing it earlier. It's all John's fault.
That's what I get for looking on the SDH Twitter account, not my own.
Yes, you need to figure out how to use both. That's definitely a good thing.
Well, I have two separate devices, and I wasn't looking at the one device that had my own personal account as opposed to the SDH account.
Katie says the Shield did not want to travel by plane. Yeah, I wonder how they did it. I mean, I think they normally will ship it. I don't know all the story behind 2018, but I know that it was on hand in Toronto. And I know that Atlanta's members of the ISC/Supporters Shield Foundation were involved in it being on hand in Toronto. I know that part happened. I'm maybe assuming that LAFC folks did not want to be on hand in Philadelphia, which I get. The travel situation is accurate. But why they couldn't have shipped it once they knew that it was going to be Philadelphia was the spot that could win it, was in control of it, it should have been there at a time. Because that was known after last weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been shipped on Monday and been in Philadelphia ahead of Sunday. Like, there's no excuse for that. That's very disappointing. The story of it's pretty awesome, for sure. So that's cool. I'm glad they did something ridiculous with it, that's for sure.
Yeah, Colonel with a programming note. important league match for his Dundalk at 2:30. They're at home to Sligo. A win or a draw to secure third in the table and a spot in next year's Europa League. It gets complicated if they lose in Waterford, draw or win.
How do you watch this stuff? Is it on iFollow?
That'd be my question.
I'm curious. Colonel, let people know, because there are people who now ask about Dundalk because we've talked about it. So let the peeps know how they can watch if they are so inclined.
Yep.
And legally, and hopefully that would help Dundalk or other people. There are always ways, but we don't advertise ways. We talk about
we don't go through like Russian websites and things like that.
We talk about the above the board ways you can watch things. Yes. We're not advertising those others.
Yeah, because full disclosure, I dropped the $9 and watched the first match from the new AFC Wimbledon Stadium last week. So gave back to the organization that way by watching the first match out in League One at the new barn.
There you go. Burned asked if the press conference today is being streamed. I don't think it is. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, Burned. I don't think it is, because usually they're not, but then oftentimes they're made available. This is an end of the season media availability they do every year, so maybe it is. Maybe it's different than the weekly coaches availability and player availabilities. So I don't know. I know people will be tweeting about it live as it happens for sure. But stay tuned on that, Burned. I don't have an answer. I'm sorry. Winter Wind asks or says, Football Manager 21 beta should be dropping in a week or so. I'll be starting Atlanta United transfer fantasy research as soon as it downloads. That's Football Manager, in the way the games play out, I mean, it's fun. It's a fun game to play. Don't get me wrong. In terms of research, it can be useful, not the way your campaign goes, but studying how they rate players. It is a good baseline for things. It's a good starting point for kind of scouting purposes like that. Very small teams in some leagues around the world will use it for such because they don't have means to do anything else. Again, it's a baseline. You got to watch the guys too. So use it in that way, Winter. Like if you're going through and you're playing it and you start scouting and you're looking at like, okay, I'm looking at this guy in Uruguay, I'm looking at this guy in Paraguay, I'm looking at this guy in Colombia. Then go and seek out video to watch for yourself outside of the game to look at. That's a fun way to do it. It can be a starting point that can point you down some different roads, but scouting, I don't think, is just done by ratings and just done by stats. I think you have to see a player. And as Carlos Bocanegra said many times, and I totally agree with him, seeing a player and seeing a player in a training environment is a really important element to making a decision on a guy. Somebody can look great in games against a certain level of competition. You have to project that to what they would look like here. But they might not be good in training. They might not be a good personality to join the group. Like there's things that can still prevent that from working out. So use it as a point, but think big picture too. Daniel's wanting to ask about Pochettino, and if somebody asks that, I hope they get yelled at. Pochettino, I think, will be the manager of Inter. I'm still going with that road because Conte, they didn't get a good result. I think he's going to be gone. He might be gone during this break. Inter should make the move so Manchester United doesn't beat them to it and bring in Pochettino. They should talk to Pochettino before they make the move. Like, do you want to come to Inter? We'll give you everything you want. We'll let you build whatever you want. We will back off. You can build. We're going to give you this transfer budget.
Here's the keys to the house.
We're going to give you a transfer budget. We're going to let you build the project you want to build. But come to Italy. You'll love it here. Come on. That's the one that makes the most sense to me. That's where he ends up. He's not coming to Atlanta. Stop the insanity. He's going to have a pick between Inter and Manchester United. And who knows, maybe Real Madrid if they keep losing 4-1 to Valencia. But those are in a different level here. That's where that's where he's looking at. Yeah, Burns says, I wouldn't be shocked if they said Glass stays. Not likely, but not impossible either. It's not impossible. I just don't think that's the plan. I think the plan was always to go get somebody bigger because that's what they've done. They haven't hired somebody who is not learning on the job, but new at that level, as Steven was this season. I think it was a great experience for Stephen Glass. I think it's going to help Atlanta United too in a big way. It's going to help Stephen Glass's career for sure because he gets that experience. But it's going to help Atlanta United too because now he's been there and done that. So when you're developing the next generation, you know exactly what to prepare them for. Like it's not theory. It's this is what happened when we were in Toronto. This is what or when we were in Hartford playing Toronto and we dropped points. This is what happened. You can't let that happen. Stuff like that. Like that's going to be really valuable. That hasn't been the blueprint, so I don't expect it. I do think he stays with Atlanta United too, and that's always been the plan. So I don't expect any changes there. Let's see here. For Dundalk, they stream matches on a private thing, so I would assume they would make the money off of it. So go check out Dundalk's website, and if you want to watch Dundalk and support them, they need to win today to get into Europe for next year. Because as we've talked about on all the shows, when you start talking revenue, for a lot of these teams, getting into continental competition is critical. Rangers is going through this conversation right now. They've just had some investment come in, which they need to probably solidify their chance to win Scotland, their chance to get into the knockout phases of the Europa League. If they do those things, then you've got more money to work with for next year, and you're able to build. That's big. For Dundalk to get back into a European spot for next year, critical. So you want to watch, go to their private thing and go to their website and find it, and there you go. Yes, 4Card, we are still doing some not crazy overreactions. It's been a good conversation today. We're still going for a little bit. 4Card says, will Joseph and Eric Lopez be able to play? Able to play, yes. Will they play? I think Lopez does. I don't think Joseph does. Could he? Sure. I would not play him against Club America. I would have him in my roster and this is all depending on if he's physically able to do it. There's no question. If there's any question, even a hint of a question, you don't play him. If there's no question and he's good to go, I don't play him against Club America, but if you advance, you have him in the group and you could use him after that. You're down 3-0. You know, I mean, it's just, it's a reality. Like, turn it over to the kids and say, hey, go flip this thing. You know? Let Eric Lopez do it. If Conway gets the opportunity, anybody else on a pro deal with Atlanta United 2 you want to take a look at, you know, if you've got other decisions, you got to make them. That will also affect the conversation we had earlier about players potentially going on loan because they'll be with Atlanta United until mid-December. That's why I think a Bello might just need the break. But a Campbell might be really good to go out on loan. Wolf might be really good to go out on loan. Even if they play in that game, then they can go on loan after that. We'll see. A lot of it's going to depend on the timeline for next year, though. We are overreacting about LAFC not getting the Supporters Shield to Philadelphia in time. That deserves an overreaction. That is ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. Winterwind talking about Football Manager. They do put a lot of time into building those ratings. They're not just thrown at it. It's far more studied than FIFA ratings, for example. Like it is a good starting point on a player for sure. It's not always accurate. Sometimes they miss, especially when you start getting into like projections and potential and things like that. But to get a good baseline of where a player is, it can work. Ricky says, what players are you expecting to come up to the twos next year that you're excited to see? I haven't dug into the academy yet to see who could be making that jump from the academy. I want to see more of Caleb Wiley.
Yeah.
I want to see more of Coleman Gannon because I want to see if he can make the jump to the next level. I'm not 100% sure yet. I think so. I want to see more. Wiley's still young. I mean, Wiley will be 16. I want to see more from him. I don't know like what 15-year-olds could make that jump and be the Caleb Wileys this year. I want to see more of David Mejia. I really like Mejia. He's got something special about him. Those are the main ones that I want to see more of at the twos level. Jackson Conway's long-term future is a big question. I want to see what that is for him. I've liked his development a lot at Atlanta United too. I think he could be ready for a homegrown deal, and we'll see if he gets that opportunity. We're not seeing the training sessions. That's the number one element here. If you play well in games, but you're not training well, it's going to be hard for you to make that jump. If you're doing both, then yes. And by all accounts, he's a hard worker. Can he project to the next level? I think so. Are you ready to pull that trigger now? We'll have to see. He's the big one I'm looking at. Burns says Lopez should go on loan as well until April, needs first division games. I wouldn't have a problem with that because he's had the training time here. You play him in CONCACAF. You get that game under his belt here. If he can go out on loan to the right place for even if it's 3 months and come back and be ready to go day one of whatever the MLS season is, I'm good with that. He would be one I would want for day one of MLS. But if he can get some games in between, I'm good. I'm good with that for sure. He's only played 16 first division games in his career. You want more out of him. You want him to have every opportunity to hit the ground running here because if you sell Barco and you open up a designated player spot, and if Eric Lopez can step into the role on the left, well, then you could use that designated player spot in some different positions, couldn't you? That opens up the possibilities that you have. Now, that's going to take a lot of evaluation in a short period of time, but you also have to get a deal done on Barco, so you've got time to do it. That could prepare him to be in a position to be able to do that. That could be a possibility. That would be very, very interesting to see all that come together. But, yeah, he needs more games, for sure.
Yes. So can I co-sign your opinion on folks like Wiley and Gannon? And I want to see I love what we saw with Jackson Conway with the twos, and I'd really like to see some stuff with Eric Lopez. But if you have to loan him out to get him reps and get him to where it's not just sitting down getting rust, I want to see that too.
Yes. Those are the questions that we have right now. So, okay, rest of the day. And just kind of a look at the week as well. So, we will get deeper into MLS playoffs probably this week, some, but a lot next week as we actually get into the games at the end of next week. The two games that stood out to me that are set up are Seattle and LAFC. LAFC gave up a late goal to fall into that spot. They got to go to Seattle now in a knockout. And Nashville-Miami. Miami got into this spot. Mikey Ambrose with a great goal. LGP with a goal. Craziness how all this works. But they get everything to fall their way. They get in, but they got to go to Nashville. Nashville maybe had looked a little wobbly, in the midweek. They got 2 late goals to beat Orlando in Orlando. That's a huge win. Yep. Huge win.
Yeah.
So Nashville's a team you got to be afraid of, in my opinion. I think Nashville wins it. I think Seattle wins it. I think the home field teams win those games. But those are the 2 games that popped to me when the brackets were set up last night.
No doubt.
We'll get deeper into previews and all that as we go into next week. We've got soccer over there tonight. Tons of stuff to wrap up from the weekend. Lots of different things to talk about from a on the field and off the field side in soccer around the world. We'll also take a look at what the U.S. men's national team match this week against Wales will look like. Hopefully we'll have Bart on the show on Thursday to talk about U.S. men's national team and what he's looking for in that match. That'll be Thursday afternoon at 2:30. FS1 has it in English. 2Day NA has it in Spanish. I believe it's 2Day NA who has it in Spanish. Lots of European games, Nations League, European Championships for next year, the final playoff games. Those will be fun to watch. You'll have South American World Cup qualifiers as well this week. We'll talk about all of that. So we'll have a lot going on this week. We'll also be talking tomorrow probably a lot about what Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra say this afternoon in their end of the year or into the season, into the MLS season is probably the better way to put it, press conference, media availability. So we'll talk about all that. There will be plenty to talk about. Yes, we will talk about Moises Caicedo as well, Monteflo, absolutely. There's some good games in Ecuador this week, too, actually. I think it's Barcelona and Independiente del Valle tomorrow. That'll be a really good game to check out on Goal TV and Fanatis. I think that's it for this morning. Okay. So thanks to everybody for hanging out. Thanks for all the conversation. Thanks for all the reactions over, under, on par. Sean asks about roster moves. I don't know. And we'll get that answer today, Sean, because Cincinnati's announced theirs, but they're not playing in CONCACAF. I do wonder if because Atlanta's playing in CONCACAF, if we won't get them until later. It's a possibility. The CONCACAF thing, it's never happened before, so, I mean, they're figuring it out on the fly and how to deal with all this. So that's going to affect it. Stay tuned. We'll know later this afternoon, basically, is what we can tell you. Soccer over there tonight at 7. You can watch on Twitch, twitch.tv/soccerdownhere. You can listen on the app. You can listen on soccerdownhere.net, or you can listen as a podcast later. Nick Alifi has been studying Ralph Rangnick all day today, thanks to the Coach's Voice Academy. He's probably going to be talking about pressing for about 120 minutes tonight.
Yes.
We'll cut him off when it gets out of hand. Don't worry. But that was a very cool thing that one of our affiliates, the Coach's Voice and their academy, put out. They had basically like a special presentation with Rangnick talking about his history and how he developed his coaching perspective. We'll talk to Nick about that today. He's been studying today, so we'll get that in. We'll get his Serie A thoughts as well. All that tonight at 7. Y'all have a good rest of the day. Mucha platio.
Mucha platio.